Hello everyone, welcome to this special session on critical reasoning. Now, what are we going to do today? You see, by the end of today's lecture, whatever we are going to do is going to change the way you prepare for critical reasoning. Yes. And how are we going to do that? First, we are going to understand the importance of CR and how it can change your performance in your bank PO exams. Yes, because that is what would create the base. You will prepare for CR, you will change the ways in which you prepare CR only when you know how important it is. Now, how important it is? In the reasoning section of bank PO exams, in mains, we get at least 4 to 5 questions based out of critical reasoning. That means 7 to 8 marks. So 7 to 8 marks in reasoning, where a lot of students still struggle to get more than 10 double-digit scores in that particular section. Their 7 to 8 marks is definitely an important component of the exam. Right now. Not only that, also in the English language section of mains, we are getting for the past couple of years 2 to 3 questions of critical reasoning. Again, 3 to 4 marks of critical reasoning directly in English language section. Okay. So, 2 sections having question from this area. And the story doesn't end here. In the recent years, that means the 2021 exam, we have seen that critical reasoning application questions have come in the reasoning section of prelims too, right? So, the importance of critical reasoning is increasing day by day. Now, does critical reasoning's importance end here? Unfortunately or fortunately, no. Why? The students who know me, they already know that I say that in mains you should target at least 30 plus in English, right? And so many students of ours have achieved that score. A major component of their achieving this score the credit rested on the critical reasoning concepts, clarity of critical reasoning concepts that they had. Why? Let me show you. Reading comprehension, para-jumble, para-completion, okay, summary, all of these kind of questions that are part of mains paper have critical reasoning application components to it. To score good in them, you need to be good at critical reasoning. So, those students who are good at the basics of critical reasoning and application of critical reasoning automatically score high in the English language section of mains and achieve that 30 plus score. So, this is the importance of critical reasoning. Its importance is not only limited to reasoning section, but to the whole paper of yours, whole performance of yours, not only to mains but also in prelims. Right? Okay. So, if something is so important, should we have a plan to handle it or not? Tell me that. We should have, right? So, this is why critical reasoning is so important. So, how are we going to go about in today's lecture? See, if something is important, we should know how to approach it. Okay. And in critical reasoning's case, it is how to approach it in a way so that we are confident about the questions as well as accurate in handling our questions. Okay. So, how to approach the specific types that we are going to discuss today differently is what we are going to look at today. And how are we going to do that? By solving memory based questions of previous year papers of critical reasoning. So, you are going to take 3 questions of 2020 and explain them and do them in detail, right? Now, I would take each one of these questions, you try them out first, and then I will explain these questions in detail so that you understand the train of thought in which I am arriving to the answer. And that is very important in critical reasoning, because critical reasoning is all about how you think in a particular way to arrive to the right answer. And that is what a lot of students struggle in. And I can understand that, because most of the time I have seen YouTubers talking about critical reasoning, they pick up the answer and try to rationalize it. try to explain the answer. But that's not how you learn critical reasoning, because you might understand when someone else is explaining the answer, but when you are supposed to do it by yourself, you will not be able to do it. Why? Because you do not know how to approach that question in an ordered, processed manner to arrive at the answer. That is what we would do today. Therefore, I will take 5 minutes in each one of those questions to explain them to you in detail. So listen to my explanations very carefully and you will be crystal clear in these type of questions, the 3 types that we would take today. Okay, right? And finally, for those students who would stay with me till the end, I would give bonus tips on how to prepare critical reasoning. Okay? Now, critical reasoning has a lot of concepts, has a lot of basics. Now, those students who are preparing with me in our course, they would have an idea about all the basics. So, they need to just follow my instructions to the T and your job would be done. But those students who are preparing by themselves, you also don't worry. I have something for you too. We have a critical reasoning full playlist in this channel, right? That would help you to move ahead with the critical reasoning question types and how to approach these question types. This is the only channel on YouTube which has detailed critical reasoning playlist. So take the full benefit of that. Okay. So let's start with the first question of the day. So this is the first question in front of you. Try it out by yourself first and then I would explain the whole concept to you. Done? Sure. Let's read the directions first. In the question given below, a statement is given followed by 3 courses of action. A course of action is taken for improvement, follow-up, etc. Read the statement carefully and give your answer. Okay. So this was the question's direction. Now what kind of question this is? Course of action question. Now before even attempting a question, you should have an idea, a basic idea about how to approach those questions. That is primary for critical reasoning questions. Don't just read and start right away with the questions. Understand what kind of question it is and what are you supposed to do in that particular question. For example, in course of action, there are some things that you should know. Let me show that to you. First of all, it should be relevant to the statement of problem. Friends, if a problem has been stated to you, that is in the statement, I will read the statement, but this is a problem statement, na? Because you have been asked what would be the course of action. So you act for a particular problem statement, right? There is a problem and you want to solve it and therefore you act against it or act for it. So this problem statement gives us what are the issues that are being faced. In your course of action, you should try and solve specifically those problems. So that means that sometimes you would get option which may look very good. In normal circumstances, in general life circumstances, they may look very good. But still they might not be a course of action answer to that particular question because it's not relevant to that particular problem. Okay, right? So remember this clearly. And third, your course of action can be reactive, that means short term in nature, the short term solution to the problem, or proactive, that is long term in nature, long term solution to the problem. Okay. Chalo. Now let's look at the statement. Now you know the basic idea of course of action. Now let's look at the statement. Muslim scholars from 3 countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Indonesia, issued an edict on Saturday saying that violent extremism and terrorism, including suicide attacks, are against Islamic principles in an effort to convince the Taliban to end their violence. So let's see what has happened. You have 3 Muslim countries scholar saying that terrorism, suicide attacks are against Islam, against Islamic principles. And why are you doing so? Or why are these scholars doing so? They are doing so that they can convince Taliban to end their violence. Right? Now, what are the course of action? The Muslim scholars from the 3 countries should force the Taliban leaders to sign an agreement whereby they will no longer engage in acts of violence. Now, you might think that, okay, this is relevant to the topic and this is doing the job. But my dear friends, is it relevant? Look at the statement of problem. The statement of problem says, in an effort to convince the Taliban. Now, if the Muslim scholars had so much power to force the Taliban, they would not have tried to convince by creating or making edicts, right? So, therefore, they do not have so much power over Taliban. That is clear from this statement of problem. So, saying that they should force Taliban is of no use because they cannot, right? So, this is eliminated. Understood? When I said relevant to statement of problem, this looks good. This looks good, one, but is not practical according to the statement of problem. Now, along with the edict, the Muslim scholars should also appeal to United Nations and seek their help in persuading the Taliban. Now, this makes sense. Persuasion of someone, effort of convincing of someone are of the same level, are of the same degree. Okay? So, therefore, this can be done, and this is a logical way based on the statement of problem 2, that we are trying to persuade Taliban from multiple angles. So, 2 can be. Third, the Muslim scholars should send a petition to the Islamic Court of Justice asking them to force the Taliban to stop their violent activities. Then again the same logic. If you had the authority or the ability to force Taliban, why would you do something to convince them? So, this is also eliminated on the lines of 1. So, your answer is only 2. Your answer is only 2 follows. Got it? Shalom. Next. Next question in front of you. Take 2 minutes and try it out by yourself. Pause the lecture and take 2 minutes. Done? So, what is the direction of this question? Saying, in the question below is given a statement followed by 3 assumptions, numbered 1, 2, 3. An assumption is something supposed or taken for granted. You have to consider the following assumption and decide which of the assumption is implicit. Okay? So, what kind of question this is? This is assumption question. Just like the course of action, we should know something about assumption, especially about assumption because there are lots of misconception about assumption. So, let's look at the assumptions, major points that you should know about. It is not your assumption that is being asked. It is author's assumption. What the author is thinking while he is creating this argument and coming to this conclusion, that what is being asked. What you think or what is your assumption is of no use here. Okay? This is a misconception of a lot of students and even of a lot of teachers. So, don't misconstrue assumption question as the reader's assumption question. No, they are not. It is author's assumption question. Okay? Once you understand this, you automatically are able to look at assumption questions with a more rational thought process. Now, second, assumption is the basis for conclusion. I told you it is something that the author thinks at the back of his mind to come to the conclusion or say in his argument what he says. Now, one technique that I teach students to do questions of assumptions fast and with full confidence that they would be accurate is the negation of assumption technique. Now, what is this assumption technique or negation of assumption technique? I will show that to you in a moment. Okay. But understand the basic idea behind it. What happens is that assumption is the foundation of the argument. Okay. Just like building's foundation. If I break the foundation of the building will crumble, it will come down. Similarly, if I break the assumption, the foundation of the argument's validity would also be questionable. Same way, right? That same logic we use to do assumption questions fast and accurately. Now, let's look at the question. Reliance Communications has completed paying Swedish telecom gear Ericsson nearly 580 crore, thereby ensuring the telco's chairman Anil Ambani does not go to jail. Now, there is a thereby, so whatever follows that would be a conclusion kind of statement. So, what the author is saying is that Reliance has paid his dues and therefore its chairman will not go to jail. Okay, so this is a conclusion kind of statement for the author. With payment of rupees 462 crore, then he is giving more data. The debt-laden telco ends its 18-month long battle with Ericsson. So, there was some legal battle going on between Ericsson and Reliance, and paying dues has ended that. Okay. So, that is another, conclusive kind of statement. Which had claimed dues for its maintenance services. So, Ericsson had claimed dues for its maintenance services. Ericsson has received the payment and it will accordingly withdraw the petition filed for insolvency. Okay, right? Now, what are the assumption options? Now, these are those options. Think it like this. At the back of our mind, you should think that should the author think this when he is writing this, right? Should the author assume this when he is making these conclusions, right? Think about that while reading the options. RCom's financial woes do not end with this payment. It has already defaulted on spectrum payment to Department of Telecom and needs to pay another 281 crore to government in April. Is this even relevant to this? I mean, it is relevant in terms of the context, but as an assumption option, is it even relevant? It is talking about what RCom faces in future, right? That cannot be an assumption for what has been stated in this statement, right? This is irrelevant. Okay. So, for this conclusion or this conclusion, do you need this? No, you don't need this. Take now. The battle between Ericsson and RCom started when Swedish company moved to bankruptcy court alleging that it has not been paid dues after signing a 7-year deal. Now, this seems relevant that this has happened and therefore, this has led to the case and possibility of Anil Ambani going to jail, right? So, this can be an event which happened before this statement which led to this. But what did I say? We need author's assumption. Now, is it an assumption? It cannot be an assumption. Assumption would be a rule, a condition, unstated rule, unstated condition that would be at the back of the mind of the author that would lead him to conclude whatever he concludes in the statement. This is nothing like that. This is a statement. This is data in itself. This can be additional data. This can be strengthening of argument, but not assumption. Okay? Next. Non-payment of dues may lead to jail of the chairman or promoter of the defaulting organization. Let's see, this is a rule, this is a condition, right? Now, I told you that negation would help you see whether it can be an assumption or not. Let me show that to you. Let's say I negate this statement. Non-payment of dues will not lead to jail of chairman or promoter of the defaulting organization. If the author's belief that if non-payment of dues is there, then the chairman or promoter cannot be jailed, then would the author have said this? He would not have, na? Matlab, if I negate this option, my dear friend, my statement loses validity. At least this part of the statement loses validity, because then the author could never have said that by paying this dues ensured that Anil Ambani did not go to jail. He would never have said that. So, my statement itself becomes invalid if I negate this. That means that the author thinks that this is important. Because the author thinks that if you do not pay your dues, then the chairman of that particular organization can be jailed. Hence, he said this one, na? Right? Okay? That was negation for you. See how easily you can identify whether it is a valid assumption or not. And hence, here only 3 is implicit. Got it? Understood? Chalo. Next one. The last one. Do it by yourself. Pause the lecture and do it by yourself. 2 minutes. Done? Let's read the direction. A statement is followed by 3 inferences, numbered 1, 2 and 3. Consider the statement to be true even if it is at variance with commonly known facts. You have to decide which of the inferences, if any, follow from the given statement. Now, what kind of question this is? Inferences. Now, a lot of time people ask me what are the differences between inferences, conclusion, or inferences and assumptions, and I understand why people are so confused by that, because there is so much misinformation on YouTube about inference questions that they are bound to get confused. So, let me clarify for you so that you are clear once and for all what are inferences. What is the meaning of inference? It means that whatever you can get, whatever can be followed from the statement given. It is a generic term, na? Generic term meaning what is clear from the given statement. Okay, right? Now, conclusions are clear from the given statement. So, conclusion can act as inference. There are some type of assumptions. That can be clear from the given statement. they can also act as inferences. As a matter of fact, you might have noticed a lot of questions saying what assumption we can infer. Okay? Now, which kind of assumptions can be inferences, stated as inferences, and conclusions are inferences, but is there any type of conclusion that can be stated as inferences? These all have been discussed in various lectures in the playlist that I talked about. Go through that in detail and you would learn that. Now, coming back to this question, now that we know what are inferences, that it can be both assumption and conclusion, and it's a generic term meaning what is clear from the given statement, let's read the question. The Food Standards Agency was created in 2001 as a central regulator after a series of food and farming scandals with a mission to put consumers' interest first. Okay? Right. Now, inferences. The Food Standards Agency is responsible for public health in relation to food. Now, because it is responsible, therefore it is creating, and therefore it is a central regulator. Okay? After, as a central regulator of food, it is doing it. So, that means it has to be responsible. Now, here see, this is a kind of assumption only, This is a kind of assumption only. Negate it. Negate it. Food Standards Agency is not responsible. Would it then create? And even if it creates, can it be called a central regulator? It cannot be. Right. So, one is definitely inferable from the given statement. That's why I said it can be both assumption and conclusion. In our course, we talk about this in detail, that how, which kind of assumptions can be treated as inferences. Right. Why do we do so? This is the reason. Now, the agency's main duty is to ensure that the public gets access to the safe food. Same thing. It has to be one of its main duty, because here when there were scandals, and consumer interest needed to be put first, then the Food Standard Agency came in front. Okay. The Food Standards Agency was set up after several high profile outbreak and death. Can you infer this from the given set of statement? FSSAI might have been earlier existent. It has created a regulation keeping in mind the recent scandals, but that does not mean that it was created today. So, 3 is uninferable. It is going outside the scope of the argument. Therefore, both 1 and 2 would be our answer. Okay. So, that was our last question. So, now is the time for some bonus tips. I promised you, So those who would be till the end, I will give them some bonus tips. Here they are. First, in critical reasoning, break down the argument. Just like I did. Read the argument, understand what is the conclusion, what are the facts, right? Break down the argument so that you have a clarity. Then, don't use your external knowledge in critical reasoning. Whatever is given, just work on that, right? Just in the course of action question, I showed you that it might look to be a good solution, but it might not be relevant to the statement. So, always be inside the scope of the statement. Then, work in the confines of the given argument, just as I said. And finally, have confidence in yourself, my friends. A lot of time I see students breaking down at the end. They have found out the answer, they have reasoned out their argument, but at the end when they are to mark, they have self-doubt. They think, "Arey, this can be the answer kya? No, let me mark C." Just random. So, don't do that. Have confidence in yourself. You saw how reasoning out the argument makes your life easy. Just do that. Don't try to rationalize the answers while looking at solution. Try to arrive at the answers by following the pattern of thought processes we talked about. Okay. And then you would see not only your confidence in CR is increasing, your overall confidence in the language of English, in reasoning, has also increased. Okay. So, with these 4 bonus tips, I am sure you can master critical reasoning, which in turn would give you a lot of confidence in the reasoning as well as the English section. So, that would be all for today. Thank you very much and all the best.